Okay, so here I am, and I've set up, let's see if you can see this. This tray here is some rapid fix, just a little bit in the tray. This is all water. So I got 3 trays of water. And what I'm planning to do is to bleach. Now the bleach I'm using is Farmer's Reducer, which Kodak used to sell in, but it's basically ferric cyanide and fixer. But I don't mix it together, I do it separate. So this is where I have some, I don't know if you can see this, but this is ferric cyanide. And they're crystals. Oxidizes fairly quickly, so you have to mix it before you use it. This is how much I use. And you have to make sure it dissolves completely, because the crystals will sit on film and bleach a hole right through that where that one crystal is. And that's why I have to have all the separate baths, because you can't contaminate any of this into any of your regular chemistry, because if it gets in there, after a while, one crystal will sit on your negative and burn a hole, bleach out the image completely. So once any film touches the bleach, you have to keep it away from film that hasn't touched it. It hasn't been involved with any of the bleaching. So I'm going to take, now if you remember, I made 3 of these. And that's because I'm going to bleach all 3. And what I've got is a piece of glass that I got from a graphics artist, and it's got the pins in here, so it'll fit the registration together. So when I put all 3 together, I can view it. Now, the object here now is to bleach the film so that only the areas you want to be dark will be black, and essentially will be on the film. Now, when you add 3 of them together, it gets fairly dark. If you only use 2 or 1, it's gray. It's not as dark. Line film tends to be very sharp. It's got a very hard edge. So you have to be careful if you are going to incorporate a bit of gray at this stage, because it can be harsh. But let me get, this will be helpful. Let me get the, I'll be right back. I'm going to get a print. Okay, so this is the print that I made from the negative. And again, this is printed darker, and this is more of the darkness I want, but I want the detail down here. So I'm going to try to capture this detail by making this particular part of the mask dark where I want the blacks. So I want it clear where this is. You can barely see that, okay? So that's what we're doing. So, start. It takes a while. So I always do this emulsion up. So this is emulsion down, and the bleach obviously acts on the emulsion. So I flip it over, and I have a timer behind the camera here, and I usually bleach for a couple of minutes, constantly rocking this. And I do 1 sheet at a time, because if it sticks together, you're going to get a line where the films are touching. And you won't see the effect of the bleach as much while it's in the bleach. You'll see it when I put it in the fixer, because it'll clear. And that's what the fixer would do. If you want overall bleaching, let's say you shot a negative and it's overexposed or overdeveloped, but it's a good picture and you wanted to print it, then you could mix this and this together. It doesn't last very long when you do that, but then when you bleach it doesn't overall. It cuts. The Farmer reducer will reduce the negative across the grayscale. Right now, I'm just trying to bleach a part of the grayscale, so I do it. I separate them. Okay. At least that's what the instructions say. Okay, so it's been about a minute and 15 seconds. And this takes a long time, so I'm not going to film everything. I just want to do one sheet and then turn the camera back on when I've got 3 of them done, and you can see how I determine what is enough. Okay. And this is a very creative part of the process. What you do here affects the mask tremendously. And so visualizing what it is you're trying to get is very important. Okay, this is 2 minutes. So hopefully you can see. I don't like to touch this stuff because it's poisonous. It clears up. You can see how much that has cleared. It hasn't cleared enough, but so I'm going to put it back in here. Rinse off some, because this will kill this. But now you can see. Let me get this here. You see how much the bleach is done. Okay. So I'm going to give it another 30 seconds. And stick it in there. And I'll probably start bleaching these 2. Okay. So I'm going to turn the camera off because I'm not going to keep talking for 10 minutes. Okay. Okay, now I've done enough for me to start looking at this. So I'm putting these on the pins to build up the density. This is my thickest one. I bleached this the least amount. So now when I sandwich these 3 together, and I'm going to do this. What is up here? Now you can see how underneath here you've got some contrast here, and that's going to produce the next mask dodging these dark areas so that I can pull up that that very low density. There's maybe zone 1.5, zone 2 is lifted now. It's going to be dodged by a mask. It's going to allow the blacks to come out that you have here, because that's going to dodge the mask that I'm making next. And what comes out is going to dodge the final neg, because this is discarded after I have the final neg. And this is your basic use of masking, is to lighten that dark shadow without lightening the blacks, so you have good local contrast. And that's what I did on the previous video, where I used the negative I used to explain the zone system, and I lifted that, and that's exactly what I did. So this is about right. It's going to be fairly dark here, which I don't mind. So there's a certain aesthetic to this. You have to think about the picture and how it's flopped, because I'm looking at the emotion up, but so that's why masking elongates this creative part of photography. It extends the vision that you had when you're in front of the camera, processing the neg, and then all throughout you're interpreting what you shot, and you can drastically change the picture, which is the point of it all. I mean, unless you're just copying artwork that you want to replicate. Photography is this is what makes photography fun. So this part of photography makes it a lot more interesting for me and a lot more creative and a lot more. And I've been doing this since the late 70s. I think I discovered masking in 79, although back then I was mostly masking color transparency. But anyway, there's another thing. I made this. And I have to work on this, and I made 2. And this I didn't talk about in the previous video, but this is what most masking is all about. Hopefully that will help me bring some sparkle to the highlights. And you know, I'll get to that later, but right now we're gonna okay, so let me move this back. And I am going to put these 3 masks that I just bleached into the final water, which has no bleach in it. And it won't bleach. And there should be any crystals in there, so you know, I won't have any problem of anyway, let's separate these. Okay, so I'm going to bleach the other image that I'm working on. Okay, and that's this one. Now these are heavier, so it's going to take it's going to take a long time to bleach these. It's going to take, so I'm going to turn the camera off again. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes, and this is what I came up with thus far. Now you'll notice here's the original print, that's just the straight print, and it's really dark. And you still don't see detail here. Now I can go to a softer paper, but this is just printed, you know, with my standard grade 2. And the whole premise in the very beginning of these lessons was to try to design nags, everything printed on number 2 around there. And this is very challenging. I shot this because it is really drastic lighting. So anyway, now I don't want to lighten this so much that it looks like there was a flash fill or I filled that light. I want it to be dark, but I don't want to lose all this detail. But I don't necessarily want to be able to see I don't want people to focus. And I want them to see the movement of these. Kind of like inside is still and outside is moving. That's the contrast I want the viewer to see when they look at this photograph. Now it's not a great photograph. It's never gonna be, no matter what I do in the darkroom. But as an exercise, that's my focus. That's what I'm trying to do. So I don't want this so light. And if I bleach everything out, it'll really open up. I do want good local contrast here, so that you have a separation between the wall and that picture frame. So I'm thinking right now, should I do any more? I think I'm going to stop. And I did make, oh, by the way, I did make this. Let me come back. I mentioned this, it's in the frame. I made a really dark one at the end, and I dried it, and it's taped in here. And I did make contact of that without the original in place, just that, I made this. And this is on the Ilford Ortho film, so it's not lift film. It's a softer film, and this is going to be used, and it's also intermediate. It's going to be used to make a neutral density filter, basically to block everything except the window. And I don't know if I'm going to need it, but it's kind of like an insurance. If I need it, I'll have it. And at the next stage, I'll show you how I use it. And I will be using this as well. But anyway, hopefully it all makes sense to you. The problem with masking is it's a really convoluted way of thinking and seeing. What you do affects the next part of the grayscale. Where you stop affects the next part of the grayscale. So, and then because you discard this, you wind up having only the effect of the next mask. And like in that case, I'm going to a third stage, because that the first stage and then the second stage, and the second stage is going to make the third stage, which is used, and the second stage is not used. So it's very confusing, and whenever I've tried to teach this stuff in the past, no one really able to really get it. They could do it if I supervised it, and that's what I wound up doing at the lab. I kept supervising from beginning to end, and I'd get what I want. But hopefully somebody out there in internet land will try this, find out that it works, and do it. It's a lot of fun if you like darkroom work. Okay, so now I'm going to just rinse these. I don't go through the process of trying to keep these archived, because these are all going to be discarded after tomorrow. Unless I come back 3 months from now and say, yeah, if I use that, then I do the masks a little differently. And that happens. I've used, so I don't throw them away, but I don't worry about it. Because once I'm done with the neg and the mask is there taped in, it's left like that. And I don't worry about the intermediate mask anymore. Then I can discard them. When I'm happy with the neg, then I can discard all the intermediate masks, okay? Alright. I'll be back tomorrow. Okay, here we are. Next morning. As you can see, all my films are hung up and they're dry. I don't like to force dry my films. I mean, I did when I had a lab and had film dryers, but I don't want the mask to shrink. You'll notice that when I do hang, well, you can't notice, but when I do hang the film up, I hang them in the same orientation, so in case there's any shrinkage at all, they'll shrink in the same direction. But generally they don't shrink. Okay, now I'm going to mix up some HT110 dilution. I don't know what it is. I forgot what it is. I use 30 milliliters to 1 liter to make 1 liter of working solution of water. Mix it with water, and that's my general dilution. I use